Hiber-Nation 40. Grizzly's Growls presents Stories from the Hiber-Nation. Monarch, the Big Bear of Tallac, by Ernest Thompson Seton, as read by David Grizzly Smith. Part 12. Swirl and Pool and Growing Flood. Gringo wandered on with nose alert, passing countless odors of berries, roots, grouse, deer, till a new and pleasing smell came with a special force. It was not sheep, or game, or a dead thing. It was a smell of living meat. He followed the guide to a little meadow, and there he found it. There were 5 of them, red and white, great things as big as himself. But he had no fear of them. The hunter instinct came on him, and the hunter's audacity and love of achievement. He sneaked toward them upwind in order that he might still smell them, and it also kept them from smelling him. He reached the edge of the wood. Here he must stop or be seen. There was a watering place close by. He silently drank and then lay down in a thicket where he could watch. An hour passed thus. The sun went down and the cattle rose to graze. One of them, a small one, wandered nearer, then, acting suddenly with purpose, walked to the water hole. Gringo watched his chance, and as she floundered in the mud and stooped, he reared and struck with all his force. Square at her skull he aimed, and the blow went straight, but Gringo knew nothing of horns. The young, sharp horn, up-curling, hit his foot and was broken off. The blow lost half its power. The beef went down, but Gringo had to follow up the blow, and then raged and tore in anger for his wounded paw. The other cattle fled from the scene. The grizzly took the heifer in his jaws and then climbed the hill to his lair, and with this store of food he again lay down to nurse his wounds. Though painful, they were not serious. Within a week or so, Grizzly Jack was as well as ever, and roaming the woods about Fallen Leaf Lake and farther south and east, for he was extending his range as he grew. The king was coming into his kingdom. In time he met others of his kind and matched his strength with theirs. Sometimes he won, sometimes lost, but he kept on growing as the months went by, growing and learning and adding to his power. Kellyan kept track of him and knew at least the main facts of his life because he had 1 or 2 marks that always served to distinguish him. A study of the tracks had told of the round wound in the front foot and the wound in the hind foot, but there was another. The hunter had picked up the splinters of bone at the camp where he'd fired at the bear, and after long doubt, he guessed he'd broken a tusk. He hesitated to tell the story of hitting a tooth and hind toe at the same shot till later he had clearer proof of its truth. Now, no 2 animals are alike. Kinds which herd have more sameness than those that do not, and the grizzly, being a solitary kind, shows great individuality. Most grizzlies mark their length on the trees by rubbing their backs, and some will turn on the tree and claw it with their forepaws. Others hug the tree with forepaws and rake it with their hind claws. Gringo's peculiarity of marking was to rub first and then turn and tear the trunk with his teeth. It was on examining one of the bear trees one day that Kellyan discovered the facts. He'd been tracking the bear all morning and had a fine set of tracks in the dusty trail, and thus learned that the rifle wound was a toe shot in the hind foot, but his forefoot of the same side had a large round wound, the one really made by the cow's horn. When he came to the bear tree where Gringo had carved his initials, the marks were clearly made by the bear's teeth, and one of the upper tusks was broken off, so the evidence of identity was complete. "It's the same old bear," said the land to his pard. They failed to get sight of him in all this time, so the partners set to work at a series of bear traps. These are made of heavy logs and have a sliding door of hewn planks. The bait is on a trigger at the far end. A tug lets this door drop. It was a week's hard work to make 4 of these traps. They did not set them at once, for no bear will go near a thing so suspiciously new-looking. Some bears will not approach one till it gets weather-beaten and gray. But they removed all chips and covered the newly cut wood with mud, and then rubbed the inside with stale meat and hung a lump of ancient venison on the trigger of each trap. They did not go around for 3 days, knowing that the human smell must first be dissipated, and then they found but one trap sprung, the door down. Bonamy became greatly excited, for they had crossed the grisly track close by, but Kellyan had been studying the dust and suddenly laughed aloud. "Well, look at that." He pointed to a thing like a bear track, but scarcely 2 inches long. "There's the bear we'll find in that. That's a bushy-tailed bear." And Bonamy joined in the laugh when he realized the victim in the big trap was nothing but a little skunk. "Well, next time we set the bait higher and not set the trigger so fine." They rubbed their boots with stale meat when they went the rounds, and then left the traps for a week. There are bears that eat little but roots and berries, and there are bears that love best the great black salmon they can hook out of the pools when the long run is on, and there are bears that have a special fondness for flesh. These are rare. They are apt to develop unusual ferocity and meet an early death. Gringo was one of them, and he grew like the brawny, meat-fed gladiators of old, bigger, stronger, and fiercer than his fruit and root-fed kin. In contrast with this was his love of honey. The hunter on his trail learned that he never failed to dig out any bee's nest he could find, or finding none, he would eat the little honey flowers that hung like sleigh bells on the heather. Kellyan was quick to mark the signs. "Say, Bonamy, we got to find some honey." It's not easy to find a bee tree without honey to fill your bee guides, so Bonamy rode down the mountain to the nearest camp, the Tampico sheep camp, and got not honey but some sugar, from which they made syrup. They caught bees at 3 or 4 different places, tagged them with cotton, filled them with syrup, and let them fly, watching till the cotton tufts were lost to view, and by going on the lines till they met, they found the hive. A piece of gunny sack filled with comb was put on each trigger, and that night, as Gringo strode with that long, untiring swing that eats up miles like steam wheels, his sentinel nose reported the delicious smell, the one that above the rest meant joy. So Gringo Jack followed fast and far, for the place was a mile away, and reaching the curious log cavern, he halted and sniffed. There were hunter's smells, yes, but above all that smell of joy. He walked around to be sure, and knew it was inside. Then, cautiously, he entered. Some wood mice scurried by. He sniffed the bait, licked it, mumbled it, slobbered it, reveled in it, and tugged to increase the flow when bang went the great door behind, and Jack was caught. He backed up with a rush, bumped into the door, and had a sense, at least, of peril. He turned over with an effort and attacked the door, but it was strong. He examined the pen, went all around the logs where their round sides seemed easiest to tear at with his teeth, but they yielded nothing. He tried them all. He tore at the roof, the floor, but all were heavy, hard logs, spiked and pinned as one. The sun came up as he raged and shone through the little cracks of the door, and so he turned all his power on that. The door was flat, gave little hold, but he battered with his paws and tore with his teeth till plank after plank gave way. With a final crash, he drove the wreck before him, and Jack was free again. The men read the story as though in print. Yes, better, for bits of plank can tell no lies, and The track to the pen and from the pen was the track of a big bear, with a cut on the hind foot and a curious, round, peg-like scar on the front paw, while the logs inside, where a little torn, gave proof of a broken tooth. We had him that time, but he knew too much for us. Never mind, we'll see. So they kept on, caught him again. For honey he could not resist. But the wreckage of the trap was all they found in the morning. Now Pedro's brother knew a man who trapped bears, and the sheepherder remembered that it was necessary to have the door quite light tight, rather than very strong. So they battened all with tar paper outside. But Gringo was learning pen traps. He did not break the door that he did not see through, but he put one paw under and heaved it up when he finished the bait. Thus he baffled them and sported with the traps till Kellyan made the door drop into a deep groove so that the bear could put no claw beneath it. But it was cold weather now. There was deepening snow on the Sierras. The bear sign disappeared. The hunters knew that Gringo was sleeping his winter's sleep. Thank you for listening to Stories from the Hiber-Nation. Comment on the website at grizzliesgrowls.com. This program is offered under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.